People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Carl Jung. Have you ever felt like your kindness is both your greatest strength and your quietest wound? Like the world sees your soft heart as an open invitation to take, to lean, to rest, but rarely to return? There's a certain exhaustion that comes from being too kind, not because kindness is wrong, but because the world often doesn't know what to do with someone who loves deeply without demand. You begin to feel invisible in your own generosity. You pour and pour and pour until one day there's nothing left to give, and you realize no one noticed you were empty. Carl Jung once wrote about how the light we show others often hides the shadow we refuse to face within ourselves. And maybe that's what happens to those who feel too much. Empaths, the ones who sense every vibration of pain in the air, carry not just their own sorrows, but everyone else's too. They are the quiet healers of chaos, the ones who hold space for tears that aren't even theirs. But there's a danger in this kind of love, because when you keep trying to save everyone, you slowly forget that you're drowning too. Maybe you've felt it. The tired smile that hides your overwhelm. The way your chest tightens when someone says, "You're so strong," when all you want is to be held. The way you stay up late replaying every word, every mistake, every tone, not because you crave perfection, but because you can't stand the thought of hurting someone you care about. You call it love, but sometimes it's survival. This space is for you, the overthinker, the peacekeeper, the one who feels too much. In this story, we'll explore why your kindness feels heavy, why you give until it hurts, and how, buried beneath that exhaustion, there's a quiet, powerful truth Jung understood. That your empathy isn't weakness, it's an invitation to reclaim yourself. So take a deep breath. You don't need to fix anything right now, just listen. Let the words hold you for a while. And if you find yourself here, if these words feel like they were meant for you, subscribe, stay close. Because every week, we unravel the hidden sides of the heart, the places no one talks about, but everyone feels. This is not about changing who you are. It's about remembering that you too deserve the softness you give away so freely. There's a strange loneliness that follows those who feel deeply. It doesn't come from being unloved. In fact, many who carry this gift of empathy are surrounded by people, but inside, they feel unseen, because no one truly notices what it costs them to care this much. You might know this feeling, the quiet ache after being there for everyone listening, helping, calming storms that weren't yours to begin with. You go home, close the door, and suddenly the silence feels heavy. Your body feels tired, but your heart, it feels hollow. Because once again, you've given everything and received almost nothing in return. Jung once said that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And that's the secret many kind souls never realize. Your burnout isn't just about doing too much. It's about the silent war inside you, the one between the part that wants to be loved and the part that's afraid love will disappear if you ever stop giving. There's a moment you felt it when someone asks for help, and every part of you screams no, but your lips still say of course. You smile through it, but inside, something cracks. Because you didn't say yes out of love. You said yes out of fear. Fear of being seen as selfish, unkind, or worse, unwanted. This is how empaths burn out. Not suddenly, but slowly, drip by drip, kindness by kindness, until one day you realize your compassion has turned into quiet resentment. And here's what no one tells you. That resentment isn't proof that you've become cold. It's proof that your heart is asking to be remembered, that your soul is whispering, "Me too." Jung believed that every light casts a shadow, and in you, that shadow is the part that longs to be cared for, but doesn't know how to ask. You silence it. You tell yourself others have it worse. You confuse peacekeeping with love. But deep down, that silenced part of you is the key to your healing. Because you can't be endlessly kind without roots. You can't keep giving from a well that's running dry. The world needs your empathy, but it also needs your boundaries. It needs your no, just as much as your yes. So tonight, if your chest feels tight and your mind keeps replaying everything you could have done differently, pause. You are not failing anyone. You are learning that compassion isn't sacrifice, it's balance. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply stop, to breathe, to say, I'm tired, I need rest. Because healing doesn't come from doing more, it begins when you finally allow yourself to be human. There's a quiet rebellion in learning to stop overgiving. It doesn't look loud or dramatic, it begins softly, in the way you pause before saying yes, in the way you check your own heartbeat before rushing to rescue someone else. It's strange, isn't it? How guilt sneaks in the moment you try to protect your peace. You feel selfish for resting, unkind for taking space, unloving for not answering every message. Because for so long, your worth has been measured by how much you could endure. But what if the real kindness, the kind that lasts, isn't about saving everyone, but staying whole while loving them? Jung often wrote about the necessity of integrating our shadow, the hidden self we push away. For empaths, that shadow is often our anger, our boundaries, our truth, the parts we've been taught to hide so that others can stay comfortable. You weren't born to be endlessly accommodating. You learned it as survival. Maybe as a child, love felt unpredictable. Maybe peace came only when you made everyone happy. Maybe silence felt safer than honesty. And so, little by little, you learn to disappear behind your kindness. That's how empathy turns into exhaustion, when caring becomes a way to earn safety instead of express love. Think about it. You can sense someone's sadness from across a room. You know when the tone of their voice changes. You remember the pain they didn't even mention. But how often do you notice your own? You think you're being strong by ignoring your feelings. But Jung would say that anything you suppress doesn't disappear, it lives on, waiting in the dark. And that darkness grows heavier the more you pretend it's not there. The exhaustion you feel isn't weakness. It's a message. Your body is begging you to listen. Your soul is asking for your attention. Your tears, the ones you hold back, so no one else feels uncomfortable, are sacred proof that you are human, not a machine built to absorb other people's pain. You have every right to rest, to let the phone ring, to not explain, to be loved even when you're not useful. It's in those moments when you choose stillness over sacrifice that you begin to meet yourself again. The self that doesn't need to earn love. The self that doesn't need to fix everything. The self that's been quietly waiting for your permission to exist. And when you finally let that self breathe, you'll find that your kindness doesn't fade, it deepens. Because it no longer comes from fear, but from truth. There comes a moment, usually in the quiet, when no one is asking for anything, when you realize how much of your life has been lived for others. It's a strange, almost aching awareness. You begin to see the invisible patterns, the times you said yes, while your heart whispered no. The times you smiled when you wanted to cry. The times you carried someone else's sorrow just to keep them from breaking. It's not that you regret helping. You just wish someone had noticed how heavy it was. Jung believed that what we deny controls us, and what we face transforms us. And maybe this is where your transformation begins, not in changing who you are, but in turning toward the parts of you that have been begging to be seen. The tired part, the lonely part, the part that always feels too much. You might think those parts make you weak, but they are your compass. They point you back home. Because every tear you hide, every exhaustion you ignore, carries a truth. You have needs too. For years, you've been the steady one, the friend who listens, the partner who forgives, the one who knows how to keep everything together. But inside, there's a quiet yearning to be the one who doesn't have to hold it all for once. And that's where healing begins, when you allow yourself to receive the same gentleness you've spent your whole life giving. You see, true empathy isn't about absorbing others. It's about understanding without losing yourself. It's love with boundaries, care with clarity. Imagine this. You're standing in front of someone you care about. They're crying, lost, hurting. Every instinct in you wants to take their pain away, but instead you breathe, you stay present. You don't rush to fix. You don't shrink your truth to make them feel safe. You just hold space both for them and for yourself. That's real compassion. That's what Jung meant when he said that true healing requires holding the tension of opposites, the light and the dark, the self and the other, the giving and the receiving. Because balance isn't cold, it's sacred. When you learn to love yourself and others equally, something shifts. The exhaustion fades, the guilt softens. And for the first time, kindness feels light again, not because you've given less, but because you've given honestly. You start to see that being too kind was never the problem. The problem was forgetting that you were also worthy of that same kindness. So tonight, maybe pour yourself a cup of tea, sit quietly. Don't rush to fill the silence. You've carried the world for long enough, let it rest beside you for a while. There's a certain peace that comes when you stop apologizing for your softness. At first, it feels unnatural, like standing without armor for the first time. You'll notice how often your mouth wants to form the words, "I'm sorry," when you haven't done anything wrong. How your hands twitch to fix things that were never yours to fix. But slowly, you begin to notice that the world doesn't fall apart when you let go. The people who truly love you don't leave when you stop performing strength. That's when something shifts inside you. You begin to see that your sensitivity isn't a burden. It's your wisdom. It's the way you connect to life, how you read what others can't say out loud, how you turn silence into understanding. But when this gift goes unprotected, it becomes pain. Because you start to mistake emotional labor for love. And so many empaths live like that, loving in overdrive, giving without pause, becoming experts at sensing everyone's feelings except their own. But Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." What if all the exhaustion, all the disappointment, wasn't just bad luck, but a reflection of the ways you've abandoned yourself to keep the peace? Think about the last time you were hurt but said nothing. The last time someone crossed a line and you justified it. The last time you told yourself it's fine when it wasn't. That's not weakness, that's conditioning. You were taught to believe that love means self-erasure, that to be good is to disappear. But every time you silence your needs, you send your soul a quiet message. I don't matter as much as they do. That message becomes the invisible chain that keeps you in patterns of burnout. But here's the truth Jung understood, and what you might be remembering right now. The heart that feels everything is also the heart that can heal itself. You do not need to stop being kind. You only need to direct some of that kindness inward. So when you wake tomorrow and the world begins asking again for your time, your energy, your care pause, ask yourself first, do I have enough to give today without losing myself? If the answer is no, that's okay. You're not being cruel. You're being conscious. The world needs your empathy, not your exhaustion. It needs your truth, not your silence. And the moment you start honoring that, your kindness becomes a force of power, not pain. You were never meant to save everyone. You were meant to remind them by example that saving themselves is possible. There's a quiet beauty in reclaiming yourself after years of overgiving. It doesn't arrive like thunder, it unfolds gently, like dawn. You start noticing small moments of clarity, soft realizations that whisper, I don't need to prove my worth anymore. At first it feels like grief, because when you stop being who everyone expects, you lose something, the illusion that love only comes when you're useful. You'll feel the pull to go back, to make it easier for others, to shrink yourself again so no one feels disappointed. But this time, you pause. You remember how exhaustion once felt like home. You remember how it almost broke you, and you choose differently. That's how true transformation happens quietly, through the courage to stay with discomfort. Carl Jung believed that the soul becomes whole not by perfection, but by integration. That means embracing the parts you once exiled The selfish part, the angry part, the tired part, the part that wants to rest when the world screams hustle. Those parts aren't your enemies. They are your guardians. They protect your energy, your truth, your sacred center. And once you begin to honor them, your empathy becomes deeper, not because you feel more, but because you finally understand where your feelings end and others begin. You stop absorbing pain that isn't yours. You stop apologizing for being sensitive. You stop mistaking emotional chaos for connection. Instead, you start creating space, real space, for love to exist without self-abandonment. And something miraculous happens when you do that. The right people stay. Not because you're endlessly available, but because your presence finally feels alive. You laugh differently. You listen differently. You no longer give from guilt, you give from fullness. There will still be days when your old patterns whisper your name. Days when you catch yourself explaining, fixing, softening for someone who doesn't deserve it. That's okay. Healing isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. Every time you return to yourself, you grow stronger roots. You start to understand what Jung meant when he said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart." Because clarity doesn't come from doing more, it comes from being still enough to hear yourself again. So tonight, before you fall asleep, ask yourself gently, what if I gave myself the same patience I give everyone else? What if I stopped waiting for someone to notice my exhaustion and chose to rest simply because I deserve it? That's where the hidden power of being too kind reveals itself in the moment you stop seeing your sensitivity as something to survive and start seeing it as your way home,